Part 2, the documentary, and I was setting up my phone and my dad left me behind. Oh wow. What direction did he go? Dad? Dad! He got my way where my dad actually went. I went to the left and he went to the right. This is where you don't leave the cameraman behind.
Okay, cracking.
What animals live here?
Well, first it'd probably be good to give you a little history of the lake before we look at the animal life. The lake isn't a natural lake, it was actually made by people, and they made a splendid job of making this lake, and there are tributaries running into the lake, small rivers, which have lots of different wildlife in it. I could pretend to be an expert in ornithology, but if you take your phone over here we can have a look at some of the animals that live, the birds that live here. You've got the grey heron, you have the black-headed gull, the Canada goose, the coot. I'm not sure, I have to look up on some of these birds. I'm not 100% sure what some of them are. The Egyptian goose, the kingfisher, the cormorant. I've seen plenty of them in my day, and the mallard, and there's lots of other ones. Is there any in particular you like?
Nope.
You just like them all? Mm-hmm. So these birds have been on the lake ever since the lake has been introduced. Also, if you take your phone over here, you can see a sign saying no fishing or use of boats, no swimming or dogs in the water. The trouble is, when the lake was made, it was never meant to be for fish or certain types of fish, but people deliberately stocked the lake with fish so they could fish it. Now, the trouble with that is the birds often get fouled in hooks and in the lures that they use for fishing, and that can cause a slow and painful death for them, which is really sad, because we're not paying much attention to what we're doing, and people's desire to fish is quite selfish, because they don't take on board the impact it has on these beautiful birds. But nevertheless, these birds are incredible fishermen, far better than us, but it is a bit worrying when you see people coming up with lures and hooks, because the birds can be attracted to them, and if they swallow a lure or a hook, well, it's death. There's nothing that can really be done for them. It goes into their intestines and causes a slow and painful death, which is really sad. So, any other questions, Sonny?
What should we feed the birds? What should we feed the birds?
Well, again, the problem is people assume that you can just feed birds anything, and that's not true. There are strict guidelines on what we should feed the birds. For example, things like sweet corn is really good, barley, any grain substance, and any other bird food. If you go to a pet shop, and people who are aware of what the birds eat and what they need to eat, if you make some inquiries, go on Google, that'll help as well. But just don't assume you know what they eat, because of course the birds will eat bread, but bread is extremely bad for them. Their digestive system doesn't like the bread, because there's things in bread that swell up, yeast and other things, and the bread that doesn't get eaten causes algae in the lake, which is really horrid thing to come to the lake. And I think one of the biggest, if you turn your mobile phone over here past the sign, in here at one point, I'm not sure how it is now, but in here it was infested with rats. They were so bold they would actually come out and almost walk over your feet, and this is simply because we were taking bread up here and leaving stuff that the birds shouldn't be eating. And the rats are an absolute menace, apart from the fact that they're vermin, and they pollute the area. Rats also have aquatic abilities, meaning that they can swim in the water, and a lot of the birds over there, as you're filming, is a little island. They nest over there and they lay their eggs, and rats eat the eggs. And not only do the rats eat the eggs, they're also a danger to the fledgling birds, the tiny little birds who are defenseless, and the rats will eat them as well. So rats are an absolute nuisance, but rats just don't appear. They appear because of us, which is it's a real shame, because we don't pay attention to what we're doing. We think it's good fun to throw bread to the birds, but the knock-on effect is tremendous, which is bad for the birds and also incredibly bad for the birds during nesting season. And any more questions?
What bad things do humans do?
Oh, I think we've covered that question. I think first of all, humans probably don't mean to be bad, but it's short-sightedness. It's a lack of understanding of how to deal with wildlife. For example, stocking the lake with great big fish simply so they can fish. That's selfish, because they're not taking into mind that they're using lures and hooks that are extremely dangerous to the birds. As we've said, they take up bread, but also humans do another thing that's really bad. Even if they're not feeding the birds, they take food with them, and they eat the food and they discard food. They leave it lying around. And if you film over here, it's a bin. Look, in places like this, the bins are only for litter. It should not be for food litter. And I think there should be a ban on any food litter in these bins, because this will attract rats. I'm not sure if we can open it. If we can, no, it's a council job to open it, but maybe there's a latch here. No, I think a councillor. Oh, here we are. Look, now if you film in there, what do you see? You see all sorts of food waste, and this food waste immediately attracts rats. So there ought to be an immediate ban on food waste containers in here, because people think, oh, I'll put it in the bin, but the rats love anything that's had food in it, and that's got to be banned. That there no food waste goes into any of the bins in a wildlife area, because it attracts rodents, and rodents are a real nuisance. Not just the fact that they carry diseases, the fact that they're an enormous threat to the wildlife. So that's some questions. Do you have any other questions that occur to you now? Take time to think. I know it's a beautiful lake. We see all sorts of things. Anything else you'd like to ask? No. What would you like to see happening on the lake in regard to humans?
I don't know.
Do you think humans should get told off if they're caught misbehaving, doing stuff that's bad?
Yeah, probably.
I think so, yeah. And there's lots of things that happen here that are really bad.
There should probably be more warnings.
Well, the warnings, the trouble with warnings is, Samuel, that people don't pay attention to warnings. Another thing that people do is they take their dogs up and they let their dogs poo, and they don't pick up their poo, and that makes perfect food for rats as well. So there's so many things that humans are doing that is disrespectful, and actually what it is a lack of care for the environment. It's a lack of care for the animals that live here, and it's a beautiful place. The people who built this lake put an enormous amount of work into it. They had a great vision, a place where wildlife could thrive, especially aquatic wildlife. That's the reason it was built, because it is a lake. But humans who don't give that too much thought, humans tend to like nice places, but unfortunately after they've visited a nice place, they leave some horrible stuff behind. litter being the main thing, and food litter is fatal. It attracts all sorts of nasty things. So I think humans, I don't even know if it's humans being educated, because you can educate humans as much as you like, but they'll still do what they please. And that's why I am now of the opinion there should be strict penalties, because a lot of these humans know full well what they're supposed to do and what they're not meant to do, but they carry on regardless. So I think the only way ahead is for strict penalties for people that misbehave here, because they are endangering every single bird that lives on the lake, and they've brought vermin, and vermin like rats bring diseases. And of course, where there are lots of rats, you'll probably get an increase in the fox population. And the trouble with foxes are that foxes also feed on the young birds. So I think people should be made aware, but as I said a moment ago, people are aware and they don't care. And that really annoys me, why they don't care. And I think, yeah, the fact that they don't care then means that we should have strict penalties that where people are fined for misbehaving. Like taking your dog out for a walk and leaving the dog's mess on the ground is a really bad thing. Not only does it attract rats, but it's also dangerous to children. It's dangerous to adults, but it can be very, very dangerous to young children. So these are some of the things that you and I must be passionate about and raise awareness about it. Maybe we can write to the Croydon Guardian and express our displeasure at the way people behave at South Norwood Country Park and the way that they behave in Addington and Shirley Hills, because they are really making things incredibly difficult for the wildlife, and wildlife needs to be left alone. Yes, to be viewed, yes, to be appreciated, to be photographed, yes, even the birds to be fed the proper food, but we are bringing things here and to Shirley Hills that are really bad for the birds and the animals' well-being. At Shirley Hills, as I explained to you before, that somebody left a big plastic container and a fox got his head stuck in the container, and if somebody hadn't come and rescued the fox would have died a horrible death. It would have suffocated. So we just don't think, we don't care. And the amount of litter that's left at that beautiful place, Shirley Hills, is not just a few cans and a few bits of paper, it's running into tons and tons of litter. So it really tells us how some humans think, and really what it says is that humans don't care. We have a constant battle to try and preserve our environment, our planet, this beautiful planet we live on. It's the only planet we have. As one famous scientist called Carl Sagan said, we might be able to, in the near distant future, be able to visit other planets, but not to migrate. And this is the only planet we have, and it's on this planet that we make our final and last stand to maintain that we keep it safe and we keep it good for everything that lives on it apart from us, because we have a completely selfish attitude that we are the only things on this planet and we will do as we please. But we can't do that, we mustn't do that, and we need to draw a line under that and say enough is enough. We are spoiling and breaking everything. So I think little things like we're doing here at this small man-made lake, it's a start, and it's a very good start. And we need to raise our voices loudly and say we are sick of people spoiling our natural countryside. Although the lake is not a natural lake, it's a beautiful man-made lake. Nevertheless, everything else around us is natural. And you and I must speak out loudly and boldly and say we are sick of what you're doing. we have a responsibility to look after all these beautiful creatures. So I think we can maybe end our video here, and we'll pick up again tomorrow. And there's a beautiful spider walking across the paper. Okay, thank you, Sam. Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy that?
I don't know if you guys can see them.
Remember to put the paper in the bin. The paper will not
Subscribe.